Dear Helia, I feel like this has only gotten weirder with the fact that I just spoke to you a couple of days ago. If we run into each other again, I will allow you, her, to read my letters. They are addressed to you, to her. The whole experience is still fucking a bit with my head. A while before I wrote my last letter, we had been in the land of the dreaming, traveling through it in hopes to get home to the Atmos. There was also a side quest of tracking down Amos, the prince that never was? The one that's said to be leading the civil war in Anaros right now. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. That Nephilim royal that got sick and died when he was a baby. It turns out that the care aide that was sent to deal with him sent him down to the surface. When I say surface, I am literally talking about a world below the vault. Far, far below the vault. They have a surface world. Not floating islands like up here. It's a world where there's ground all the way under your feet for miles and miles. Till you hit an underground type place where there's powerful magical creatures and it's warm there near the core of their planet with lava and whatnot. Oh, and gods, Helia, hot water. All the hot water you could imagine. I had a bath nearly every day there. I felt like a fucking god. It's kind of weird to see water not being treated like a valuable resource. Samara's father, Chatham Darwin Windsor, one of those famous explorer types. His works are actually rather interesting to read. You would have liked them. I have become quite the expert on his studies thanks to Samara. She actually joined our crew in hopes to find help looking for him. We haven't found him. I have made a map of the places that he has been and expeditions that he's led into the vault. It turns out he was actually looking more into the surface world and had created a vessel that might be able to pass through the vault in certain places, according to my math. Fuck. I wish you were here to see this discovery. The surface world is apparently a spherical type planet, which means that the Atmos is more like an asteroid belt that orbits it. I have the math that proves it, as well as the math about when and where you might want to dive to the surface, or ascend from the surface without blindly lifting into the bottom of Anaros or some such. They have seas of water, not air. It's something to think about, that's for sure. Another thing I'm sure no one will believe me about. And shush yourself. I am well aware I may have gotten a little bit sidetracked. Back to Amos. He grew up there, in a land on the outskirts, fighting monsters and dragons apparently. There are scars on the earth from his resonance, and I've seen it with my own eyes that he can level a city in a single attack. We were on our way back from the surface, sent through the land of the dreaming to track him down on our way through, as we'd actually met him before. There's this little farm in Bliss. It was created when Amos and his wife tried to head up a spire to the Atmos. Apparently there's one that comes up in Yunsa, but the ascent by hand is brutal, as the weather patterns are cruel to say the least, and mostly unthinkable without the right type of ship. Amos and his family had hit a bad patch of weather, and his wife didn't make it, so they crossed to Samnia, the land of the dreaming. He said that he knew sometimes that people leave behind a presence of themselves, and he found his wife in Bliss, and they made a little farm. We got there and we spent some time convincing Amos that he needed to come back to reality, to stop literally living in a dream. His wife wanted him to move on, and I get that. Both sides of that now. Having come across you in the Sea of Stars, you have this houseboat and trade on the Sea of Stars. Said you built it out of things you found that were left behinds, like in the vault. Slightly awkward when we approached in Moncavalier. We managed to get it running, with the idea of taking it back to Amabell's Crossings, as I mentioned in my last letter. Aquita has put out a few large loans to get the parts we need to get it running. I find myself indebted again. Starting to feel like that's my life these days. I already owe him big for kind of sidetracking and dealing with some of the stuff for you. Finding your body, that is. Kind of how I landed in the mate position. He asked me quite early on if I would consider it, and I told him till I dealt with the outsider, I wasn't a reliable choice. That outsider mess, I also ended up in Mr. Goodman's pocket. He runs Sturdy Oak Armory in Amabell's Crossing. Amusing enough, Arabella works for him. But I'm getting sidetracked again. Mr. Goodman was my benefactor in search for your body to learn more about the outsider that we had to deal with. In fact, he is the reason we were able to banish it. He gave our ship a powerful music box that affected the outsider's magic, enough so that Nine could step in and help. She's the one that had that sword I told you about. Sword, spear, Enya for short, artifact woman. That's an adventure for another time to explain. We were on our way back from Honoras, having left Amos under a different identity at the palace with the Princess Queen as an advisor, I suppose. It's a chance for him to get to know his sister and family without all the strings attached. Kinda hope it works out for him. He seems like he's had a rough life. While we were docked at the royal city, rumors of war have picked up big time. War with the Ida, not the civil war in Honoras. In case you're wondering, the Ida are totally behind the civil war in Honoras. They are more or less founding it and created a fake Amos to lead the civil war, to have control over the Nephilim as well as keep them preoccupied. So we head back to Amabell's Crossing and got attacked by another outsider. That's something that keeps happening to our ship for a couple of reasons. Nine told us, well, actually Enya told us that the outsider creatures are attracted to her essence, as well as somnia residue. And I'm really not sure if she just feels bad about it, but Enya has been traveling with us since the last outsider attack, in hopes that she can help us with the next one. And her and Nine did, in a godly fashion. It's rather attractive how powerful she is. Her people skills are lacking though. I suppose it's why she uses Enya to talk to us. Enya told me that Michael had moved. He's like a weird, powerful god force that her and Nine are afraid of, that the Ida have somehow trapped and are using as part of their super weapon. She also explained that the Ida had placed fleets near every capital city, Honoras, Yunsa, Samo, and Amabell's Crossing. Aquitas suggested opening up the boilers to reach Amabell's Crossing sooner. I told him there was a strong chance the ship would break under the stress. And then it was suggested that we could travel through the dreaming world with Enya's guidance, and we would be able to get there 2 days earlier. Mon Cavalier was put out onto the Sea of Stars, and like I said, we ran into you. Part of me wishes I had stayed with you. Life would be so much more simpler like we had planned. Even if it wasn't exactly what you had in mind. I traded you a magical dagger for a bottle of wine that you had acquired on the Sea of Stars. You said it was one of the better ones you found in Somnia. I got it with Morden in mind. He is still not over your death. He's torn about everything that's been going on with the Ida. I explained the Ida movements to him when we got back to Amabell's Crossing, as well as you, and your ghost in Somnia. I gave him the wine. I still don't know if that was the right thing to do. It just doesn't seem fair to me to have seen you more than once after your death, and him to be left with literal ashes of your burnt body. He was almost as obsessed as I was to find your body. Part of me thinks that he might become obsessed with Somnia for the same reasons. He's heartbroken in a bad way. The Ida now control Amabell's Crossing. We got back and were able to pass on the information about the placement of the Ida vessels, and how the Ida are using mages to transport Michael. More accurately, we now know to transport the Arm of God, their super weapon. It's a massive ship made from some impenetrable material and massive guns. It tore apart the League's fleet and ripped apart the massive gun Amabell's Crossing has for defense. I've never felt more powerless. Ships were bleeding from the skies and fire, and there was no way to stop it. I stopped by Sturdy Oak Armory, mostly to see Mr. Goodman, but to also pick up Arabella. They're working 16-hour days. Yay, war! I tried to explain to her Amabell's crossing was about to be raked by the Ida. I just want to keep her safe. She asked me where she would go, how she would get there, and why she should run away. I told her I didn't want her to run away, just wanted her to be safe. Fuck me, Helia. I'm more than a bit torn by this. It's kinda how I ended up on a ship in the first place. There was no way I was doing that to Arabella. She works tomorrow, I suppose, and probably will if Sturdy Oak Armory isn't hit. I bid her a good night and let her go off to sleep. I let her go, and then walked away. The hand of God showed up around 10, and I just watched. I didn't run to help. I didn't run to Arabella. Part of me thinks I should have. Part of me wonders if she's okay, and the other part of me wonders if she slept through it. I doubt anybody could sleep through that. Signed, Lost Without You. Born Mad Hades.